Dear Dhamma friends, I'm addressing to all of you not as a teacher or a guru, and whatever I say here is not a sermon of any kind, actually. I'm just another fellow practitioner like yourself, and trying to share some thoughts and experiences that I have while living a Buddhist life, one could say. And so therefore, whatever I've conveyed in the Tibetan version, to some of you it may be helpful, to some of you it may be causing probably more confusion. It's always possible, because in the Tibetan sort of mentality, often things are conveyed in a very sort of honest and blunt and pragmatic way. And so therefore, sometimes due to language barriers or a lack of understanding of language, we could somehow draw more confusion than actual wisdom. And so therefore, I'm now trying to basically summarize what I said in Tibetan here in English. And so in short, the message that I was trying to convey is that of trying to take care of one's own karma. That's sort of my way of translating the word that was uttered by our historical Buddha Shakyamuni. In Tibetan, it says le dagriche, le dagrinzu. And so le as in karma, dagriche as in sort of make it your own. Probably that's one way. Take care of your own karma, or make the karma one's own. And of course, when we say that, it may sound in some ways deep, and in some ways profound, and in some ways very, very confusing. Probably all those are just the same thing. But nevertheless, I personally feel that that is probably the most appropriate thing personally for myself. Although, of course, I'm well here in India, both myself and my family, we are well here. But nevertheless, there are by now countless and countless of human beings who are affected by this pandemic known as COVID-19 or coronavirus, which is really devastating so many lives. And so therefore, when we look at the people who have died from this disease, and people who are sick from this disease, and then on top of it, when we look at the officials, the medical care system or personnels, as well as volunteers, and basically the whole social system doing their very best with whatever knowledge, whatever experience they have. Of course, they are truly inspiring, and they really require, our appreciation, to say the least. But at the same time, when we think of, in this case, the victims of this disease, it's really disturbing, of course. We almost somehow feel that probably this is it, that this is the end of the world. And that kind of fear, that kind of panic although of course we could say it's unnecessary, we shouldn't fear, we shouldn't panic, but nevertheless, when it happens, it happens. There's nothing else that one can do. So personally for myself, when I think of this ongoing situation, even myself, I could also resort to basically fear and panic. But nevertheless, not to say that I have found the solution, but when I really try to take time and reflect on what Buddha has said, it has really the most needed and most beneficial quality when I focus on Buddha Dharma. And so therefore, from all of the teachings, if I try to summarize, then the most appropriate one that I can think of in very simple words is none other than to take care of one's own karma. And the reason why I find that this is most appropriate and beneficial is because, we as practitioners, we are supposed to, in a sense of, from a perspective of mission, one could say, that we are supposed to save everyone, that we are supposed to liberate everyone. And so therefore, when we have that kind of mindset, and then on top of it, if we experience and witness, and even ourselves, if we experience, if we, directly succumb to these diseases, then it just sets up an impossible task. And the only solution that we could have is just basically give in to fear. And so therefore, I think, not just that I think, but I really feel from the core of my heart that taking care of one's own karma is really a profound way of dealing with what we're experiencing right now. And so the way I understand taking care of one's own karma is that the moment we are born, or one could say from the beginningless time, but probably something that is easier to grasp and easier to understand and relate is that from the moment we are born, we are naturally sort of subjected to change, naturally subjected to impermanence. There is simply no other way. And of course, to assist the young, to assist those who may not yet have the ability to understand what change means, obviously we have accumulated all forms of concepts, meaning in the form of religion, in the form of science, in the form of philosophy, in the form of education. All these are just mediums to help us assist in understanding change, actually. That's the real purpose of it, regardless of which concept is better or not. That at the end of the day, that is the purpose. And so therefore, Buddhism is just another medium which is trying to actually assist us, by us, for us, one could say, something like that, to help us understand change. And karma is basically a very simple, yet at the same time a very vast and profound way of describing change. Because when we just say karma, of course, it's just a very general term. If you dissect that a little bit, it means cause, conditions, and effects. So these three components, when summarized into one word, is karma. And that's what it means. And so none of them, meaning the causes, conditions, the results, none of them really independently exist on their own. That they are all interdependent. If one is there, the others are there, just like form and shadow. And so therefore, the meaning of taking care of one's own karma means basically observe the karma. Observe how these conditions rise and observe how these conditions fall. Meaning what goes up must come down is another way of describing karma. And so therefore, this precious human existence that we have is one of the greatest platform to help us understand what this change means. And so it's the greatest window, it's the greatest chance, opportunity that we have to understand. Of course, it's very fleeting, simply by the nature that itself is change. Life itself is change. This human existence is change. But nevertheless, it's almost like saying the change, the nature of change itself is offering an opportunity to understand itself. And so therefore, we have been given this opportunity. Of course, it depends on each of us as individuals, how we take it, that this opportunity is given by some unforeseen power or divinity, or just by accident, or by somebody. It just doesn't matter, really. At the end of the day, all we need to understand is that, realize and appreciate this human existence. That itself is caused, this human condition is caused, itself is the condition, and itself is the result. But beyond that, if you try to dig and see, but where is the absolute cause? Where did the chicken actually came from? Is egg the absolute or the other way around? If you really force it, we will never be able to find the absolute cause. Like for example, in this case of outbreak, we are trying to also find which is the patient zero. How did it break? How did it come into this? Who is responsible? So we are always trying to find the absolute cause, and it's impossible because this human existence itself is, appeared in and manifested in such a way that it is naturally subjected to change. And so therefore anything can be a cause, you see. Doesn't necessarily have to be one particular cause. For example, accidents or, the most fearsome thing that we don't want to witness is death, right? And so therefore, simply because of that, we educate the young ones not to do this, not to do that, you must do this, you must do that. In short, when we educate them, when we bring them, at the end of the day, it's said, it's conveyed, so such messages were conveyed to them, of course, out of genuine care and love. But nevertheless, there is, at the back of one's mind, let's say, that there is some sort of feeling of being insecure, somehow doubting one's own, let's say, composure, that somehow from all the bad things that can happen, one thing that must never ever happen is that we should never change, we should never get sick, we should never age, we should never die. And so that resistance that we have is somehow intertwined in such a way or mixed in such a way when we try to actually help, when we try to assist, when we try to educate others. And as a result of it, then although of course pure intentions are conveyed, but no matter how young, how let's say immature children may be, somehow in time they come to realize something on their subconscious level that I think what my parents, what my friends, what my teachers have been telling me is that I must not die, I must not get fall sick, and so therefore, how to say, this thing that we feel that we must not let these devastating things happen or take place in our lives are caused in such a way, and we will never really be able to understand the absolute cause, simply because we are the change, and anything can actually cause how to say aging. Anything can cause us death, and so therefore really there is no real sense of guarantee or security actually. Having said that, of course, that might cause the biggest panic, the biggest fear, but yeah, it's simply how to say, it's difficult, of course. It's difficult for us to stay composed, but nevertheless, if it makes sense that we have not necessarily a mission or a duty to save the world, but at least if we think from the point of view that we have been given this chance, of course, in the Buddhist way we would say it's due to the blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and the other component, which is our own merit. The combination of those then gave this opportunity. That's our way of saying it. If that's inspiring, please take it that way. If you feel that it is given by a divinity, you can also take it that way. Even if you feel that this opportunity is given, or not necessarily given, but it just simply happened by accident. If you can find some form of confidence, if you think in that way, it does not matter. Whatever way it works to give us the confidence and the composure to reflect on how change works, how things are caused, how things condition each other, and how the results actually look like. That's all that matters. That's what it means when I say taking care of one's own karma. It doesn't mean that, oh, you have to become responsible, because of course now, particularly in the light of this now outbreak, everyone is encouraging each other by saying, take responsibility. Meaning that I would say, do not spread the disease by doing things that are unnecessary, no matter how important they may seem. And that could, that itself, as well as when I say we have, we as a practitioner, we have to take responsibility, those two, both of those can be misunderstood, that as if it's you who did it, and so therefore now take responsibility and take the punishment, you know. It's never meant in that way. Taking care of one's own karma simply means, or make the karma your own, means that you are the karma, you are the change, and the world is change. And so you are the same, we are the same. We are not different at all, we are interdependent. And so therefore, the most sensible thing, the most noble thing to do is simply to go with that flow of change. And only then we will find some sense of, how to say, lack of pressure. That's what it is. Right now, the biggest cause of this panic is coming from this pressure that I must survive. at all costs. I must not get sick. I'm not saying this in a selfish way, but for example, you can also think in this way, that my loved one must not get sick. My loved ones simply must not lose their lives. And although, of course, it's pure, it's beautiful to have that intensity, to have that enthusiasm, to have that care, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that, how to say, that we can give in to this panic of survival. Although, of course, it looks like we are just now planning for survival in terms of how we now prepare to stock up on things, to stock up on various forms of resources, for example, food, water, medicine, how to say, financial means, all forms of conditions that we are trying to gather. But how to say, that itself has no guarantee. If you really focus and if you really think clearly, that doesn't really give any real. No, it's not even a matter of that. According to this calculation, if we store this much of food or this much of water, this much of medicine, this much of, if we take this much of precaution, that it's going to give us this much percentage of survival. Although, of course, for others' sake, we have to somehow keep up the appearance, to really say it honestly, that we are doing everything we can. And that's exactly what these doctors and nurses and officials are trying to do. They also understand at the back of their mind that there is no real guarantee, but panic is the worst thing that could happen. And so therefore, in order to ensure that that panic is not created, they are taking all sorts of measures. But they themselves also know that there is no real guarantee for that. And so therefore, I'm not saying that Buddhism has the solution to all these problems and to liberate ourselves from this pandemic. But personally, what I really find it most beneficial and most reassuring is that if we take care of one's own karma, meaning if we observe the change and see that we are the change and this world is the change, everything is simply changing, then it gives us actually extra confidence to actually now provide help, provide care, or taking care of ourselves, that we don't somehow doubt ourselves that yes, of course, I must take care of myself, I must take care of others, but at the same time, we kind of know that this itself is a vicious cycle, but we have no choice, and so we must give in to this. So if we hang on to that, habit, if we hang on to that fear, if we hang on to that afflictive emotion, then all we will get is just panic after panic, fear after fear, and then it'll amount to nothing. Whereas if you can accept the change, if you can accept karma, not as a punishment, not as a mistake, not as a flaw, because now we could think that although of course in terms of unifying ourselves as, let's say, the human race, of course, this virus outbreak can be seen as probably an interesting, factor to help us unite. Meaning, whenever a society is formed, often, strangely enough, it always needs some form of opposition, some form of a villain, let's say. And then, by identifying that villain, then under that banner, then we all unite. And in this case, this virus is also doing the same thing, most probably. And so therefore I say that it's interesting. But nevertheless, just because we are able to stop this disease doesn't mean that that is it, you know. Maybe for a brief period, let's say, if within the next few years, if you find the vaccination and so on, maybe for just a few days, maybe for just a few minutes, or maximum maybe for just a few months, we might finally be able to breathe and to feel some sense of pleasure. But that kind of pleasure is, although of course much sought after, but nevertheless, it doesn't really mean anything, of course, because right after that something else can occur. And so therefore, accepting change seems to be really profound, because then we accept, we give ourselves the confidence to accept change, one, and then due to that, then we feel a sense of lack of pressure, you see, lack of weight. And then that, instead of being a vicious cycle, it's a very, how do I say it, a very meaningful and very reasonable cycle, let's say. It will start something like that, where then it gives us the confidence to actually go with the change. And while going with the change, then we will be able to give each other confidence also to accept the change. And then now, if you are doctors, if you are nurses, if you are officials, even we will also get the confidence to do whatever we can, even if it means just to now prolong the inevitable, or maybe to stop the disease, or to reduce the fear and panic. Even if all of these just simply means it's a temporary measure, even then we will have the energy and the confidence to be able to perform those tasks. So that's how I think Bodhisattvas and Buddhas actually go about their activities, actually. Because them, from their, let's say, omniscience, or from their wisdom, of course, they know pretty much that change, if you put it in a crude way, then life is already doomed from the very beginning, yes? And so therefore, even they could feel that there is no point to do anything. Just let things be, you know? And then try and take advices like let things be and so on, in a manner like as if there's simply nothing you can do about it. But it's not like that. Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, even though they see that the moment we are born, that we are doomed to die, sort of thing, even if they see it in that way, they see that constantly by providing, even if it's just a very temporary breather, that also is helpful, that also is meaningful to do. And so therefore, for that kind of reasons, then there are various levels of practices of saying that if you do such practices, it will prolong your life. If you do such practices, it will take away your obstacles. Of course, all those are just temporary, of course, but it gives us a breather. And we kind of know that it's false, but it does help us. And so therefore, we will be able to gain confidence if we are able to accept change, accept karma, and make it your own, without this sort of putting it in a crude way of saying that it's a sort of punishment because of my own doing from the past, or because of our doing from the past, by simply embracing the karma that we are change, and there is no need to feel embarrassed about it. There is no need to feel a sense of guilt that that I am not going to, let's say, be permanent. I'm not going to be, how to say, the ground or the rock for everyone, you know. So if we are able to accept that we are change, and that the rest of let's say like a branch of change, which is everything around this ecological world, the virus itself, you see, this is very important to focus, I feel. You never know. Viruses, of course, now from a medical point of view or from a scientific point of view, it might be it may be difficult to categorize them as sentient beings, but you never know. Maybe they are also. Maybe they are. After all, they are living and breathing and thriving. They do seem to have that kind of ability. So you never know. Maybe they are also living, breathing, sentient beings. And so that means, if that's the case, then they are the change, and we are the change, and we are no different. Temporarily, if you can find a way to somehow now let this disease sort of flow in a much more natural course, let's say, by means of medicine, by means of precaution, of course, it's great, but nevertheless, whatever direction that this disease may take us, we, as practitioners, one could say, we, even if we're just assuming ourselves as practitioners, we must never, how to say, give up and let go that we have the best chance, the best solution, which is this time, this space, this rebirth that we have, where we can finally accept change. For so many countless of lives before, we have denied over and over again from accepting change. And I don't mean to say that because of that now we are suffering its consequences in a sort of crude way. But out of that confusion, out of that denial, something beautiful has emerged, which is this life. And so it's not really our duty, it's not our mission, but it's sensible, it's most interesting, it's most beautiful if we can make use of this life to accept change. And this is my fervent wish, this is what I wanted to convey. As always, of course, when I say something, how to say, the English being not my mother tongue, and even in Tibetan also, although I'm supposed to be a Tibetan, to say I'm also equally not as fluent I should be, as I should be in Tibetan. So therefore, due to those lack of, to say, usage of the languages, sometimes it may be causing confusions to you as the audience or listeners. So for that, I truly apologize. But nevertheless, I'm just, as I always say, thinking out loud and making use of this technological means to maybe sort of hear my thoughts, let's say. So I hope that it'll be of some benefit for all of you. I thank you so much for taking time to hear these thoughts. And as always, I'm praying for all of us for whatever it's worth. I am doing my best to pray for all of us that not only we will be able to overcome this disease, but that we will be able to actually understand change, understand how things, how things function. So then hopefully I will be able to have the courage to share with you in the near future some of my thoughts like these. Whether they are beneficial or not on a fundamental level, I don't know, but I'll do my best if it helps. But now beside that, then, how to say, while thinking of what I said, if it's meaningful, then now try to, how to say, channel what you understood through our, how to say, our formal practices, or through our formal methods. For example, just earlier I recorded the Jarizik meditation in Tibetan. So means like that, sadhanas, meditational guides, all of these are a channel, a way to help us channel what we deeply understand. And so then I would like to ask all of you, whenever you find time, to meditate. And I always meditate together. So, but I'm sure that when I say that, actually I've always said it in the past, no matter where we are, no matter how far we are from each other, the one moment where we are all together is when we meditate. And so therefore, regardless of distance and time and space, when I'm meditating, then I know that whoever is meditating, we are there together. And so that's the case, I think. Actually, that is the case. So thank you so much, everyone. Please stay strong in terms of not just put up a good front, but to stay strong in a way that you see that you have the best opportunity. Thank you so much.